The thing about marriage is that it's like a lobster trap. Easy to get into, damn near impossible to get out of, and eventually something's going to get cooked. I should have seen it coming when Tessa started caring more about her Instagram followers than our mortgage payments, but hindsight's 2020, especially when you're looking through the bottom of a whiskey glass. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Elliot Brewer, and I own a small art gallery in Millfield, Maine, population 3,147 on a good day, when the tourists aren't running for their lives from our charming local weather. Used to be a carpenter until a bad fall convinced me that dealing with pretentious art buyers was safer than dealing with gravity. Turns out I was wrong about the safety part. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night when my world imploded. Tessa was at another one of her networking events, which I was beginning to suspect involved more horizontal than vertical networking. She'd left her tablet on the kitchen counter, and the damn thing kept pinging with notifications. Now, I'm not usually the snooping type, but when your wife's device is lighting up like a Christmas tree at midnight, curiosity tends to override common sense. The first message made me freeze. Can't wait to feel you inside me again tomorrow. Colby Rusk, the town's golden boy restaurateur, owner of the Salt and Anchor, Millfield's only upscale dining establishment. The same Colby who'd been unusually friendly at the Blue Hour Festival planning meetings, always finding excuses to stand close to Tessa, always offering to give her rides home when I was too busy with the gallery. I opened the message thread with hands that weren't quite steady. What I found was 6 months of explicit photos, detailed descriptions of their encounters, and worst of all, their plans for the future. A future that apparently didn't include me breathing. He's getting suspicious, Tessa had written just 3 days ago. Maybe it's time to move to phase 2. Already talked to my lawyer friend, Colby had replied. Embezzlement charges would stick if we plant the evidence right. Then you get everything in the divorce, and we can be together without hiding. I set the tablet down carefully, like it was a live grenade. Which, in a way, it was. 23 years of marriage, 23 years of building something together, of weathering storms both literal and metaphorical in this God-forsaken coastal town. And she was planning to frame me for embezzlement, to steal everything I'd worked for. The front door creaked open at 12:47 a.m. I know because I was staring at the clock, wondering if this was what a heart attack felt like. Elliot? You still up? Tessa's voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she was lying, which, apparently, had been most of the time lately. Just finishing some gallery paperwork, I called back, closing the tablet and sliding it back to its original position. How is the networking? She appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair slightly mussed, lipstick gone, dress wrinkled in all the wrong places. If I hadn't seen the messages, I might have believed her story about helping plan the festival's marketing campaign. Oh, you know how these things are. Boring committee stuff. Margot was there and we got to talking about the spa's new promotion. She kissed my forehead, and I caught a whiff of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I'm exhausted. Coming to bed? In a few minutes, I said, managing what I hoped was a normal smile. Just want to finish this up. She squeezed my shoulder, the same hands that had been photographed doing considerably more intimate things with Colby Rusk, and headed upstairs. I listened to her footsteps, the sound of running water, the creak of our bed as she settled in. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and started planning. The Blue Hour Festival was Millfield's biggest event of the year, a week-long celebration that brought in tourists, money, and enough chaos to cover a multitude of sins. It was also, according to the messages I'd read, when Tessa and Colby planned to make their move against me. The festival started in 10 days. That gave me 10 days to turn the tables. I opened my laptop and started researching. Colby Rusk wasn't quite as golden as his reputation suggested. 3 restaurants in Portland had failed before he'd moved to Millfield. There were whispers about unpaid debts, health code violations, and a pattern of seducing married women in every town he'd operated in. By 3 a.m., I had the beginnings of a plan. By 4 a.m., I had a list of people who might help me. By 5 a.m., I was booking a flight to Boston under the pretense of buying art for the gallery. Because if Tessa and Colby wanted to play games, I was going to teach them the rules. The flight to Boston was supposed to be routine, a quick trip to meet with some artists, maybe pick up a few pieces for the gallery's summer show. What I hadn't expected was to find myself sitting next to a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread about successful coastal living. She was probably mid-30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably took an hour to perfect. Her clothes screamed money, but not the flashy kind, the quiet, confident kind that came from never having to think about price tags. "Excuse me," she said, as I settled into the seat beside her, "but aren't you Elliot Brewer, from the Millfield Gallery?" I nodded, surprised. "Do we know each other?" "Moira Castellano. I've been to a few of your shows. Beautiful work." She extended a manicured hand, and her grip was firm, confident. "I have a place on Millfield Lake. Well, had. I'm in the process of selling." "Moving away from our little slice of paradise?" I asked, trying for light conversation while my mind was still churning over everything I'd discovered the night before. Her laugh was bitter. "Let's just say the view isn't what it used to be. Too many rats in paradise, if you know what I mean." Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. There was pain behind those green eyes, the kind of controlled hurt I recognized because I'd been seeing it in my own mirror. "Rats?" I asked. She studied me for a moment, as if weighing whether to trust a stranger on a plane. Then she opened her purse and pulled out her phone. "My husband," she said, showing me a photo of a handsome man with salt and pepper hair and a politician's smile. "Dr. Marcus Castellano. Very successful, very respected, very married, or so I thought." She swiped to the next photo, and my blood turned to ice water. It was Tessa, my Tessa, in a hotel room that definitely wasn't ours, wearing considerably less than she'd been wearing when she came home last night, and she wasn't alone. "Your wife's been hooking up with my husband," Moira said quietly. "Along with half the men in Millfield, from what I can tell. But Marcus is her current favorite." I stared at the photo, my mind reeling. "How long have you known?" "About 6 months. I hired a private investigator when Marcus started working late every night and coming home smelling like cheap perfume." She put the phone away. "What about you?" "Last night, found messages on her tablet." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. "Though apparently Colby Rusk is her main squeeze, your husband might be the side piece." "Colby Rusk?" Moira's eyes sharpened. "The restaurant guy? Oh, this is rich. She's playing them against each other." "You know Colby?" "Marcus has been investing in his restaurant expansion. Apparently, my soon-to-be ex-husband has been mixing business with pleasure in more ways than one." She leaned back in her seat, a calculating look crossing her face. "You know what this means, don't you? That my wife is even more of a sociopath than I thought? That we have leverage." Moira smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. 2 betrayed spouses with evidence, money, and motivation. We could destroy all 3 of them if we play this right. I looked at her carefully. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that revenge is a dish best served cold, and I happen to have a very good refrigerator." She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "Think about it, Elliot. They've been planning to ruin us. Maybe it's time we returned the favor." The card was expensive, heavy stock with raised lettering. Moira Castellano Strategic Consulting. Below that, a phone number and an address on the wealthy side of Millfield. "Strategic Consulting?" I asked. I help people solve problems, usually business problems, but I'm flexible. Her smile widened. And right now, I'd say we both have a very big problem that needs solving. The plane started its descent into Boston, and I found myself staring out the window at the city below. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry had been whether the new shipment of paintings would arrive in time for the summer show. Now I was contemplating conspiracy with a stranger to destroy my wife and her lovers. The Blue Hour Festival, I said suddenly. What about it? That's when they're planning to make their move against me. Frame me for embezzlement, destroy my reputation, take everything. I turned to face her. But it's also when the whole town will be watching. If we're going to do this, that's our stage. Moira's eyes lit up with genuine interest. Now you're thinking strategically. The festival brings in reporters, social media influencers, potential investors, maximum exposure for maximum damage. You're really serious about this? Elliot, my husband has been stealing from our joint accounts to fund his affairs. He's planning to divorce me and claim I'm mentally unstable so he can keep everything. Meanwhile, your wife is setting you up for criminal charges. She leaned closer, and I caught a hint of expensive perfume. They've declared war on us. I'm just suggesting we fight back. The plane touched down with a bump, and passengers began gathering their belongings. I sat there for a moment, the business card heavy in my hand. One condition, I said finally. What's that? We do this smart, legal. I'm not going to prison for revenge, no matter how satisfying it might be. Moira's smile was sharp as a blade. Oh, honey, the best revenge is always legal. It's also permanent. As we walked through the terminal together, I found myself wondering if I was making a deal with an angel or a devil. Then I remembered the photos on Tessa's tablet, the casual way she'd planned to destroy my life, and decided it didn't matter. Sometimes you need a devil on your side. Sam Rodriguez had been working at my gallery for 3 years, and in that time, I'd learned 2 important things about him. He was absolutely terrible at selling art, and he was absolutely brilliant at finding information that people didn't want found. The first trait should have gotten him fired. The second made him invaluable. "Boss, you look like someone ran over your dog," Sam said when I walked into the gallery the next morning. He was 26, skinny as a rail, and had the kind of nervous energy that came from drinking too much coffee and sleeping too little. Rough trip to Boston? You could say that. I set my bag down behind the counter and looked around the gallery. It wasn't much, a converted storefront on Main Street with decent lighting and enough wall space to display maybe 30 pieces at a time, but it was mine, or at least it had been until I discovered my wife's plans to take it away. "Sam, I need a favor, a big one." His eyes lit up. Sam lived for favors, especially the kind that involved computers and questionable ethics. "What kind of favor are we talking about? Because if it's the kind that could get me arrested, I charge extra. The kind where you help me save my business and possibly my freedom." That got his attention. Sam might be a terrible salesman, but he was loyal, and he understood that if the gallery went down, his job went with it. I told him everything. The messages, the affair, the embezzlement scheme, my meeting with Moira. Sam listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Holy shit, boss," he said when I finished. "Your wife is stone cold." "Language, Sam. Sorry, your wife is stone cold evil. Better?" He started pacing, which was what Sam did when his brain was working overtime. "So what do you need from me?" "Information. Everything you can find on Colby Rusk, Dr. Marcus Castellano, and anyone else who might be involved in this mess. Financial records, social media, public documents, whatever you can dig up legally. Define legally. If it's publicly available or obtainable through legitimate means, it's fair game. If it requires hacking, breaking and entering, or bribing government officials, it's off the table." Sam looked disappointed. "You take all the fun out of everything." "But okay, I can work within those parameters. He cracked his knuckles dramatically. Give me 48 hours. We don't have 48 hours. The festival starts in 8 days, and I need to know what we're dealing with before then. Fine, 24 hours, but I'm going to need coffee, lots of coffee, and probably some of those energy drinks that taste like battery acid, but keep you awake for 36 hours straight. Whatever you need. Just be careful, Sam. These people are playing for keeps. Boss, I once hacked into my high school's computer system to change my girlfriend's grade in chemistry. If I can handle teenage love, I can handle middle-aged revenge. I left Sam to his research and drove across town to meet Moira at her lake house. The address on her business card led me down a winding road lined with expensive homes, each one more impressive than the last. Hers was at the end of the lane, a sprawling contemporary structure that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Moira answered the door wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. She looked younger without the business attire, but no less formidable. "Welcome to my soon-to-be former home," she said, leading me through a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. "Coffee?" "Please." She disappeared into a kitchen that looked like it had been designed by someone who actually knew how to cook, returning a few minutes later with 2 steaming mugs. "So," she said, settling into a leather chair across from me, "what's our plan?" "I've got my assistant researching our targets. What about you? What kind of strategic consulting do you actually do?" "Crisis management, mostly. When a company or individual finds themselves in trouble, they call me to help clean up the mess. I've handled everything from embezzlement scandals to harassment cases to environmental disasters. And now you're applying those skills to personal revenge. Think of it as crisis management in reverse. Instead of cleaning up a mess, we're creating one." She smiled over her coffee mug. For the right people, of course. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Found something big on Rusk. Can you come back to the gallery?" "That was fast," I said, showing Moira the message. "Your assistant works quickly. Sam's got his flaws, but lack of motivation isn't one of them." I stood up. "Want to come see what he found?" "Wouldn't miss it." We drove back to the gallery in Moira's BMW, which handled the coastal roads like it was designed for them. Sam was practically vibrating with excitement when we walked in. "Boss, you are not going to believe what I found," he said, not even waiting for introductions. "Colby Rusk is in deep financial trouble, like potentially going to prison deep." "What kind of trouble?" Moira asked. Sam looked at me questioningly, and I nodded. "This is Moira Castellano. She's helping with the situation." "Cool. Okay, so I started with public records, right? Business licenses, tax filings, that kind of thing. Rusk's restaurant has been hemorrhaging money for the past 18 months. He's behind on rent, behind on supplier payments, behind on payroll taxes." "That's not necessarily criminal," I said. "No, but this is." Sam pulled up a document on his computer screen. He's been taking investment money from local business owners, promising to expand the restaurant, but instead of using it for renovations, he's been paying off old debts and funding his lifestyle. That's fraud. Moira leaned forward, studying the screen. "How much money are we talking about?" "So far, about $200,000, and get this, one of his biggest investors is Dr. Marcus Castellano." Moira's face went very still. "My husband invested in Rusk's restaurant?" $50,000, according to these documents. Signed the check 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Moira repeated softly. Right around the time he started working late every night. "It gets better," Sam continued. "Or worse, depending on how you look at it. Rusk has been using the restaurant as a front for other activities. I found records of private parties, off-the-books catering events, and what looks like some kind of escort service." "Escort service?" I asked. "High-end stuff. Wealthy clients, married women looking for excitement, that kind of thing. Very discreet, very expensive, and very illegal in the state of Maine." I felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together in my head. Tessa's been organizing events for him, private parties, networking dinners. She's not just sleeping with him, Moira said, understanding dawning in her voice. She's working for him, recruiting clients. And my husband isn't just investing in the restaurant, Moira continued. He's probably a client. Sam nodded enthusiastically. That's what I'm thinking. And if that's true, then we've got them on fraud, tax evasion, and prostitution. The trifecta of felonies. I stared at the computer screen, trying to process what we'd learned. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was running a criminal enterprise with her lover, using my reputation and connections in the community to provide cover. There's one more thing, Sam said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I found a storage unit rented under Tessa's name, paid for with cash, registered 6 months ago. Want to bet that's where they're keeping the evidence they plan to plant against you? I looked at Moira, who was studying me with those sharp green eyes. Well, she said finally, this changes things considerably. How so? Because now we're not just talking about revenge. We're talking about justice. And justice, my dear Elliot, is much more satisfying than simple payback. She was right. But as I looked at the evidence Sam had compiled, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to step into something much more dangerous than a simple marital dispute. The Blue Hour Festival was 6 days away, and we were no longer just planning to embarrass a few cheating spouses. We were planning to bring down a criminal conspiracy. I just hoped we were smart enough to do it without becoming casualties ourselves. The thing about small towns is that everyone knows everyone else's business, except when they don't. And the things they don't know are usually the things that matter most. Take the monthly wine tasting at the Salt and Anchor, for instance. To most of Millfield, it was just a fancy social event, where the well-to-do gathered to drink overpriced wine and gossip about their neighbors. What they didn't know was that it was also a recruitment opportunity for Colby's side business. I'd been attending these tastings for 3 years, back when I thought my biggest problem was pretending to enjoy conversations about wine's bouquet and finish. Now, as I straightened my tie in the mirror, I was preparing for what Moira had called reconnaissance in action. You sure about this plan? Sam asked, adjusting the tiny camera he'd clipped to my jacket button. Because if this goes wrong, you're going to be wearing that wine instead of drinking it. It's not going wrong, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. Moira knows what she's doing. Moira's not the one walking into a room full of criminals with a hidden camera. He had a point, but we needed evidence, and the wine tasting was our best opportunity to get close to Colby without raising suspicions. The Salt and Anchor occupied a converted Victorian mansion on Harbor Street, all weathered shingles and expensive renovations. Colby had done a good job with the restoration, I had to admit. Too bad he was using it as a front for fraud and prostitution. Tessa was already there when I arrived, looking stunning in a black cocktail dress that I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She was standing close to Colby, laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his arm, in a way that would have looked casual to anyone who didn't know what I knew. Elliot! Colby's voice boomed across the room as he spotted me. Glad you could make it. We've got some exceptional wines tonight. He approached with that practiced smile that had charmed half the town and apparently seduced the other half. Up close, I could see why women found him attractive, tall, well-built, with the kind of confidence that came from never having been told no. Colby, I said, shaking his offered hand. Thanks for hosting. Business seems to be booming. Can't complain, though I'm always looking for new investment opportunities if you're interested. His eyes gleamed with what I now recognized as predatory interest. A man with your connections in the art world could be very valuable to the right ventures. What kind of ventures? Oh, this and that. Private events, exclusive services, catering to clients with particular tastes. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Tessa's been telling me about some of your gallery clients, wealthy, discreet, looking for experiences they can't find at home. I felt my jaw clench, but forced myself to smile. Sounds intriguing. Maybe we should discuss it sometime, over dinner, just the three of us. His gaze flicked toward Tessa, who was now talking to Dr. Castellano near the bar. I think you'd find our business model very stimulating. The camera in my button was recording every word, but I needed more than vague innuendo. I needed him to be specific. I'd be interested in hearing more details, I said. What exactly are we talking about here? Colby's smile widened. Well, let's just say that some of our clients are willing to pay premium prices for premium companionship, and some of our companions are very skilled at providing exactly what those clients need. Companionship, I repeated. The kind that's hard to find through conventional channels. Married women, mostly, looking for excitement their husbands can't provide. We simply facilitate introductions. There it was, clear, recorded, and completely incriminating. Sounds like a lucrative business, I said. Very. In fact, we're expanding soon. New location, bigger operation, more exclusive clientele. He gestured toward the crowded room. Half the men here are investors, and most of the women are potential staff. I followed his gaze and felt sick. I recognized most of these people, neighbors, friends, pillars of the community. How many of them were part of this? The beauty of it, Colby continued, is that everyone has something to lose if the arrangement becomes public. Mutually assured discretion, you might say. And if someone decides they don't want to be discreet anymore? His smile turned cold. Well, that would be unfortunate for them. People in small towns can be very judgmental about certain behaviors. Careers can be ruined, marriages destroyed, reputations shattered. He straightened his tie casually. Good thing everyone understands the importance of keeping quiet. It was a threat, delivered with the same casual tone he might use to discuss the weather, and suddenly I understood why no one had spoken up about what was happening. They were all trapped, either as clients, staff, or investors, all with too much to lose if the truth came out. Excuse me for a moment, I said, needing to get away before I did something that would blow our entire plan. I made my way to the bar, where Moira was engaged in animated conversation with Dr. Castellano. She looked up as I approached, and something in my expression must have alerted her because she smoothly excused herself from her husband. How did it go? She asked quietly. We got him. Everything we need. I glanced around the room, seeing it with new eyes. Moira, this is bigger than we thought. Half the town is involved. I know. Marcus just offered to introduce me to some interesting people who could help with my loneliness after our divorce. Her voice was steady, but I could see the fury in her eyes. Apparently, I fit the profile of their target demographic. We need to get out of here. Not yet. We need one more thing. She nodded toward Tessa, who was now talking to Margot near the wine display. Your wife is the key to their recruitment operation. If we can get her to incriminate herself on camera, how? Leave that to me. Just be ready to create a distraction if things go wrong. Moira made her way across the room toward Tessa and Margot, wine glass in hand, looking like just another socialite making conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see Tessa's body language change as Moira spoke, becoming more animated, more excited. Then disaster struck. A waiter carrying a tray of red wine stumbled, or appeared to stumble, right into Colby, drenching his expensive white shirt in Cabernet Sauvignon. You clumsy idiot! Colby roared, his carefully maintained facade cracking. This shirt cost more than you make in a month! The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare as Colby continued his tirade, berating the young waiter with language that would have made a sailor blush. It was ugly, vicious, and completely at odds with his public persona, and every phone in the room was recording it. Sir, I'm so sorry. the waiter stammered. It was an accident. An accident. Colby grabbed the young man by the shirt. I'll show you what an accident looks like, you worthless. Colby, stop. Tessa appeared at his side, trying to calm him down, but he was beyond reason now. Don't tell me to stop. Do you know how much this dinner jacket cost? Do you have any idea? That's when I realized the waiter looked familiar, very familiar. It was Sam. Our eyes met across the room, and he gave me the tiniest nod before turning back to his performance as the clumsy server. The little genius had gotten himself hired as temporary staff for the evening. I can pay for dry cleaning, Sam offered, still playing his role perfectly. Dry cleaning? Colby laughed harshly. This is ruined, you moron, completely ruined, just like everything else you people touch. The room was dead silent now. Several people had their phones out, recording Colby's meltdown for posterity. I could see the exact moment he realized what he'd done. The way his face went pale, the way his eyes darted around the room, taking in all those cameras. I'm sorry, he said, trying to regain his composure. I didn't mean... It's just that this shirt has sentimental value. But it was too late. The mask had slipped, and everyone had seen what was underneath. Within minutes, the video would be on social media. Within hours, it would be everywhere. Moira appeared at my side, her face flushed with excitement. Did you get what you needed from Tessa? I asked quietly. Better. She offered to set me up with some of her special friends for a fee. Very specific about the services available and the prices involved. She smiled grimly. I think it's time to go. We made our excuses and left, Sam following a few minutes later after being fired for his clumsiness. We met at the gallery, where Sam immediately pulled out his phone. Please tell me you got all that, I said. Every beautiful second. He was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Colby's confession, Tessa's recruitment pitch, and the cherry on top, his complete meltdown in front of half the town's social elite. The video's already going viral, Moira added, checking her own phone. #Colby meltdown is trending locally. I sat down heavily in one of the gallery chairs, suddenly exhausted. What happens now? Now we wait, Moira said. Let them panic. Let them make mistakes. The festival is in 4 days, and they're going to be scrambling to do damage control. And then? Then we finish what we started. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. They wanted to destroy us, Elliot. Now it's our turn. As I watched the video of Colby's meltdown play on Sam's phone, I felt a grim satisfaction. We'd drawn first blood, and it had been more effective than I'd dared hope. But I also knew that wounded animals were often the most dangerous, and we'd just wounded 3 of them. The real battle was about to begin. The thing about small-town scandals is that they spread faster than wildfire and burn twice as hot. By the next morning, Colby's wine-soaked meltdown had been viewed over 10,000 times on various social media platforms, and the comments section was brutal. Always knew he was a fake. Treating service workers like that? Disgusting. Won't be eating at his restaurant again. I was reading through the comments on my phone when Sam burst into the gallery, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Boss, we've got problems, he said, slightly out of breath. Big problems. I looked up from my phone. What kind of problems? The kind where someone broke into my apartment last night and trashed the place. He held up his laptop, which looked like it had been used for batting practice. They were looking for something specific. Took my computer, my backup drives, even my old college notebooks. My blood went cold. Are you okay? Yeah, I wasn't there. Stayed at my girlfriend's place. He set the destroyed laptop on the counter. But boss, they knew exactly what they were looking for. This wasn't random. Did you call the police? What am I going to tell them? That someone broke in and stole evidence of a criminal conspiracy that I obtained through questionably legal means? Sam shook his head. Besides, I'm pretty sure I know who's behind it. Before I could ask what he meant, the gallery door chimed, and Detective Russell walked in. Tom Russell had been a friend since high school, back when our biggest worry was whether we'd have dates for prom. Now he was looking at me with the expression cops get when they're about to deliver bad news. "Elliot," he said, nodding to Sam. "Sam, mind if we talk?" "Depends on what we're talking about," I replied carefully. "Someone filed a complaint against you last night. Harassment, stalking, threatening behavior." Tom's expression was apologetic but serious. "I need to ask you some questions. Who filed the complaint?" "Tessa Brewer, your wife." I stared at him. "My wife thinks I'm harassing her?" "She says you've been following her, taking pictures, making threats about ruining her reputation." Tom pulled out a small notebook. "She's got witnesses, Elliot. People who say they saw you acting erratically at social events, making accusations." "That's ridiculous. I haven't—" I stopped, realizing how this looked. "Tom, you know me. Do you really think I'm capable of stalking my own wife?" "What I think doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a formal complaint, and I have to investigate it." He looked around the gallery, taking in the expensive art, the tidy displays. She also mentioned some concerns about the gallery's finances, irregularities in the books, missing money. There it was, the embezzlement setup, right on schedule. "Tom, I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said. "My wife is involved in something illegal, and she's trying to frame me to cover it up." "That's a serious accusation, Elliot." "I have proof." I looked at Sam, who nodded slightly. We'd prepared for this possibility. "Financial records, recorded conversations, evidence of fraud and prostitution." Tom's eyebrows went up. "Prostitution?" "Colby Rusk is running an escort service out of his restaurant. My wife is helping him recruit clients and staff." I chose my words carefully. "I've been investigating because I discovered they were planning to frame me for embezzlement." "Do you have this evidence with you?" Sam stepped forward. "Most of it was stolen from my apartment last night, but we've got backups." He pulled out a flash drive. "Everything's here. Financial records, recorded conversations, the works." Tom looked skeptical. "And how exactly did you obtain these recorded conversations?" "Legally," I said quickly. "I recorded conversations I was a party to in public places where there was no expectation of privacy." "Uh-huh." Tom took the flash drive but didn't look convinced. "I'll need to review all this, but in the meantime, I need you to stay away from your wife. No contact, no following her around, no showing up at events she's attending." "Tom, she's living in my house." "Then maybe one of you should find somewhere else to stay until this gets sorted out." He headed for the door, then turned back. "Elliot, I'm saying this as a friend. Be very careful. If even half of what you're alleging is true, you're dealing with people who have a lot to lose. People like that can be dangerous." After he left, Sam and I sat in silence for a few minutes. "They're good," Sam said finally. "Getting your wife to file a complaint, making it look like you're the unstable one. Classic misdirection. The question is, how did they know we were investigating them?" "Maybe they didn't. Maybe this was always part of their plan, and the timing is just coincidental." I shook my head. "No, this is too coordinated. Someone told them what we were doing." I thought about the wine tasting, the people who'd been there, the conversations I'd had. Or someone saw us together and put two and two together. My phone buzzed with a text from Moira. "Need to see you. Urgent. Meet me at the lake house." "I have to go," I told Sam. "Stay here, keep the gallery open, and for God's sake, be careful. If they broke into your apartment, they might try something here too." "What about the restraining order thing?" "There's no restraining order. Yet. Tom was just warning me off." I grabbed my jacket. "But Sam? If anyone comes around asking questions about me, you don't know anything about any investigation? As far as you're concerned, I'm just a guy who sells art and drinks too much coffee." The drive to Moira's lake house took 20 minutes, and I spent most of it checking my rearview mirror for signs that I was being followed. The paranoia was probably justified. If they'd broken into Sam's apartment, they were definitely keeping tabs on all of us. Moira answered the door before I could knock, her face grim. "We need to talk," she said, leading me into the living room. "Sit down." I sat. "What's wrong?" "Marcus filed for divorce this morning. Emergency petition, claiming I'm mentally unstable and financially irresponsible." She handed me a legal document. "He's asking for a restraining order and control of all our assets, pending a psychiatric evaluation." I scanned the document, my heart sinking. They're using the same playbook on both of us. It gets worse. He's claiming I've been making wild accusations about him and threatening to ruin his medical practice with false allegations. She laughed bitterly. "False allegations. That's rich. Did you tell anyone about our investigation?" "No one. But someone's been watching us, Elliot. I found a tracking device on my car this morning." She held up a small electronic device. Professional grade, not something you buy at an electronics store. I stared at the tracker. "How long has it been there?" "Could be days, could be weeks. Long enough for them to know about every meeting we've had, every place we've been together." "So they know about Sam, the gallery, everything we've been doing." "Probably." Moira sat down across from me, her composure finally cracking slightly. "Elliot, I think we underestimated them. This isn't just a few people having affairs. This is organized, professional. They've got lawyers, private investigators, maybe even connections in law enforcement." "Tom Russell isn't corrupt," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. "Maybe not, but information has a way of getting around in small towns. The wrong word in the wrong ear, and suddenly our evidence disappears and we're the ones under investigation." I thought about Tom's visit, the way he'd looked at me, the questions he'd asked. "You think they got to him?" "I think they're covering all their bases. Discredit us, isolate us, make us look like the criminals while they play the victims." She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the lake. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We stick to the plan. The festival is in 3 days. We expose them publicly, with enough evidence that they can't spin their way out of it." "What if they move against us first? What if we wake up tomorrow and find ourselves arrested on trumped-up charges?" It was a valid concern. If they had connections in law enforcement, they could easily arrange for us to be taken off the board before the festival even started. "Then we move faster," I said. "We don't wait for the festival. We do it now." Moira turned from the window. "Do what now?" "Expose everything. Tonight. Social media, local news, anyone who'll listen. Flood the zone with so much information that they can't suppress it all. That's risky. If we move too soon, they might be able to contain the damage. And if we wait too long, we might not get the chance to move at all." I stood up, feeling more determined than I had in days. "Moira, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep escalating until they destroy us completely. Our only chance is to strike first and strike hard." She studied my face for a long moment. "You're right. But if we're going to do this, we need to do it smart, coordinated. Hit them from multiple angles simultaneously so they can't respond to all the threats at once." "What do you have in mind?" "Leave that to me. I've been thinking about this since I found the tracker." She smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked genuinely dangerous. "They want to play dirty? Let's show them what dirty really looks like." As I drove back to town, I felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. We were about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed, to start a war that would end with either our complete victory or our total destruction. But as I thought about Tessa's betrayal, Colby's threats, and the web of corruption they'd built around themselves, I realized I was okay with that. Some wars were worth fighting, even if you weren't sure you could win. Especially then. The Blue Hour Festival officially started at sunset on Friday, but the real action began at 3 in the afternoon, when the first news van pulled into downtown Millfield. By 4 o'clock, there were 5 vans, 24 reporters, and enough camera equipment to film a Hollywood movie. I watched it all from the window of my gallery, feeling like a general observing the battlefield before the final assault. Sam was beside me, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "Think it's going to work?" he asked for the 10th time in an hour. "It's going to work," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. Moira's plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to expose the conspiracy ourselves, we'd fed the information to investigative reporters from 3 different news outlets simultaneously. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs, witness statements, everything we'd gathered over the past week, packaged and delivered to people whose job it was to dig up dirt and expose corruption. The beauty of it was that once the story broke, it would be out of our hands. No restraining orders or harassment charges could stop a legitimate news investigation. "Boss," Sam said, pointing down the street, "isn't that your wife?" I looked where he was pointing and saw Tessa standing outside the Salt and Anchor, talking animatedly to a man in an expensive suit. Even from a distance, I could see the panic in her body language. "That's her lawyer," I said, recognizing the man from his photo in the local legal directory. "Looks like they're in damage control mode." My phone buzzed with a text from Moira. "It's happening. Channel 8 is going live in 10 minutes. I turned on the small TV we kept in the gallery's back office, tuning it to the local news station. Sam crowded beside me as we waited for the broadcast to begin. At exactly 4:30, the regular programming was interrupted by a breaking news alert. "Good afternoon, I'm Jennifer Walsh with Channel 8 News. We're breaking into regular programming with a developing story out of Millfield, where a months-long investigation has uncovered what appears to be an extensive criminal conspiracy involving fraud, tax evasion, and prostitution." The screen cut to footage of the Salt and Anchor, then to photos of Colby, Tessa, and Dr. Castellano. At the center of the allegations is Colby Rusk, owner of the popular Salt and Anchor restaurant, who is accused of operating an illegal escort service while defrauding investors out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I felt a grim satisfaction as the reporter detailed everything we'd uncovered: the fake investment schemes, the prostitution ring, the network of clients and co-conspirators that reached into every level of Millfield society. Among those implicated are Dr. Marcus Castellano, a prominent local physician who allegedly invested in the scheme, and Tessa Brewer, wife of local gallery owner Elliot Brewer, who is accused of recruiting clients and managing the escort operation. Sam let out a low whistle. "They're not pulling any punches." The broadcast continued for another 10 minutes, with reporters interviewing former employees, showing financial documents, and playing audio recordings of incriminating conversations. It was thorough, professional, and devastating. When it ended, Sam and I sat in stunned silence. "Holy shit," Sam said finally. "We actually did it." Before I could respond, my phone started ringing. Tom Russell. "Elliot, are you watching the news?" "Yeah, Tom, I'm watching. We need to talk, now. There are going to be arrests, and I need to know if you're involved in any of this." "I'm not involved in the criminal conspiracy, if that's what you're asking, but I did provide information to the reporters." "Jesus, Elliot, why didn't you come to me with this?" "Because my wife had already filed a harassment complaint against me, and I wasn't sure who I could trust." I paused. "Tom, I need you to know, everything they're going to say about me being unstable or threatening people, it's all lies. They were setting me up to take the fall for their crimes." "I believe you. But Elliot, you need to get down here right now. There's going to be a media circus, and you don't want to get caught up in it." I hung up and looked at Sam. "I have to go to the police station." "Want me to come with you?" "No, stay here. Keep an eye on things. And Sam, if anyone comes around asking questions, you tell them the truth. We helped expose criminals, and we're proud of it. The drive to the police station took me past the Salt and Anchor, where I could see Colby and Tessa standing in the parking lot, surrounded by reporters and camera crews. Colby was shouting something about lies and false accusations, while Tessa stood beside him looking like she was about to be sick. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. 23 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Her standing in a parking lot, her life imploding on live television. Then I remembered the messages on her tablet, the casual way she'd planned to destroy me, and the feeling passed. Tom was waiting for me at the station, along with 2 detectives I didn't recognize. "Elliot, these are Detectives Morrison and Chen from the state police. They're heading up the investigation." Detective Morrison was a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes. Detective Chen was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested he took his job very seriously. "Mr. Brewer," Morrison said, "we understand you've been investigating the activities of Colby Rusk and others for several weeks now." "That's correct." "And you provided information to news outlets rather than coming to local law enforcement." "I provided information to professional journalists who had the resources to investigate properly and the platform to expose the truth." I met her gaze steadily. Given that my wife had filed false harassment charges against me, I wasn't sure I could trust the local system to handle it fairly. Chen leaned forward. "What made you suspect your wife was involved in criminal activity?" I told them everything. The messages on Tessa's tablet, my meeting with Moira, our investigation into Colby's finances, the evidence we'd gathered. They listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. "Do you have copies of the evidence you provided to the media?" Morrison asked. "Some of it. My assistant's apartment was broken into, and his computers were stolen, but we had backups of the most important material." "We'll need everything you have," Chen said. "This is going to be a complex investigation, and we want to make sure we have all the facts." "Are you arresting me for anything?" Morrison shook her head. "At this point, you appear to be a witness, not a suspect. Though I have to ask, did you obtain any of this evidence through illegal means?" "No. Everything was either publicly available, obtained through legitimate channels, or recorded during conversations I was a party to." "What about the recordings from inside Rusk's restaurant?" I hesitated. This was the tricky part. I attended a public event where I had conversations with Rusk and others. I recorded those conversations using equipment that was concealed but not hidden in a way that violated any reasonable expectation of privacy. It was a fine legal distinction, but an important one. Morrison and Chen exchanged glances. "We'll need to review the recordings and the circumstances under which they were made," Morrison said. "But for now, you're free to go. We may have more questions as the investigation continues." I left the police station feeling drained but oddly relieved. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't looking over my shoulder or wondering when the next shoe would drop. As I drove back to the gallery, I passed the Salt and Anchor again. The parking lot was empty now except for a single police car and some crime scene tape fluttering in the evening breeze. Sam was waiting for me with a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. "Thought you might need this," he said, pouring us each a generous measure. "What's the latest?" "Colby was arrested an hour ago. Fraud, tax evasion, and about 6 other charges. Your wife and Dr. Castellano were taken in for questioning but not arrested yet." I sipped the bourbon, feeling the burn as it went down. "What about Moira?" "Haven't seen her, but her husband was led away in handcuffs about 30 minutes ago. The reporters are calling it the biggest scandal in Millfield history." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the harbor. The Blue Hour Festival was supposed to be starting right about now, but the downtown area was eerily quiet except for the occasional news van driving past. "So, what happens now?" Sam asked. "Now we wait. There'll be trials, probably a lot of them, media attention for a while. The town will be a mess for months. Any regrets? I thought about it seriously. A week ago, I'd been a small-town gallery owner with a failing marriage and a drinking problem. Now I was a key witness in a major criminal investigation. My wife was facing felony charges, and my life would never be the same. No, I said finally. No regrets. My phone buzzed with a text from Moira. It's over. Thank you. I showed the message to Sam, who raised his glass. To justice served cold, he said. To justice served at exactly the right temperature, I corrected. We clinked glasses and drank, watching the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of sirens, probably heading to make more arrests. The Blue Hour Festival would have to wait until next year. This year, Millfield had a different kind of celebration to attend to, the kind where the guilty finally faced the consequences of their actions. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Epilogue. After the storm. 6 months later, I was hanging a new painting in the gallery when Tom Russell walked in. He looked older, more tired, like a man who'd seen too much of human nature's dark side. Elliot, he said, nodding at the painting. Nice piece. Thanks. Local artist. She's been getting a lot of attention since the trials started. The trials. 3 of them, actually, with more probably coming. Colby had been convicted on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Dr. Castellano had pled guilty to fraud and received 5 years. Tessa. Speaking of the trials, Tom said, I thought you should know. Tessa's lawyer reached out to the prosecutor. She wants to make a deal. I set down the hammer I'd been using to adjust the painting's position. What kind of deal? Full cooperation, testimony against the remaining defendants, restitution to the victims. Tom paused. In exchange for a reduced sentence, probably 2 to 3 years instead of 8 to 10. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me wanted her to serve every day she had coming, but another part, the part that remembered 23 years of marriage, both good and bad, was almost relieved. Are you okay with that? Tom asked. It's not up to me. Justice isn't about what I want. It's about what's right. I picked up the hammer again, needing something to do with my hands. Besides, 2 to 3 years is still 2 to 3 years. True enough. Tom looked around the gallery, taking in the new pieces, the fresh paint, the general air of renewal. Place looks good. Business picking up? Better than ever, actually. Turns out being at the center of a major scandal is good for the art business, at least if you're on the right side of it. It was true. The gallery had been featured in several news stories as the place where the investigation had been planned and coordinated. Tourists came by to see where it all started, and many of them ended up buying something. I'd had to hire 2 part-time employees to help Sam manage the increased traffic. What about Moira? She's doing well. Divorced Marcus, kept most of their assets thanks to his criminal conviction. She's thinking about moving away, starting fresh somewhere else. Can't say I blame her. Tom headed for the door, then turned back. Elliot, I owe you an apology. When Tessa filed that complaint, I should have dug deeper instead of just taking her word for it. You were doing your job, Tom. And to be fair, I probably did look pretty unstable from the outside. Maybe, but I've known you for 30 years. I should have trusted my instincts. After he left, I went back to hanging paintings and thinking about the past 6 months. The media attention had been intense for a while. Reporters, interviews, even a documentary crew that had spent 3 days filming at the gallery. But eventually, the circus had moved on to other scandals, other stories. Millfield was slowly returning to normal, or at least a new version of normal. The Salt and Anchor had been sold to a restaurant chain and reopened under new management. Several prominent families had left town rather than face the ongoing scrutiny. The Blue Hour Festival had been canceled indefinitely, but life went on. People adapted. The town survived, as small towns always do. Sam came in around noon with coffee and sandwiches from the new deli down the street. "Any word on the Castellano house?" he asked, handing me a cup. "Sold yesterday. Cash buyer from Boston, planning to use it as a summer place." "And Moira?" "Flying out tomorrow. She found a place in California near San Francisco. Says she wants to be somewhere no one knows her story." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Think you'll miss her?" It was a good question. Moira and I had developed an odd friendship over the past few months, bonded by shared trauma and mutual revenge. We'd had dinner a few times, nothing romantic, just two people who'd been through something extraordinary together. "I'll miss having someone who understands what it was like," I said, finally. "But I think she needs a fresh start, and honestly, so do I." "Speaking of fresh starts," Sam said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This came for you this morning." I recognized the handwriting immediately. Tessa's careful script, the same handwriting that had signed birthday cards and anniversary notes for more than 2 decades. "You don't have to read it," Sam said quietly. "No, I should." I opened the envelope carefully, half expecting it to explode in my hands. The letter was short, written on plain paper in blue ink. "Elliot, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence by making excuses for what I did. I made choices, terrible choices, and I'm going to pay for them for the rest of my life. I want you to know that the plan to frame you for embezzlement wasn't my idea." That was all Colby. I went along with it because I was scared and selfish and convinced myself that you'd be better off without me anyway. I was wrong about that, like I was wrong about so many things. I hope someday you can find happiness with someone who deserves you. Someone who won't throw away 23 years for the thrill of feeling wanted by a man who turned out to be a criminal. I'm sorry, Elliot, for all of it. Tessa. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. "You okay?" Sam asked. "Yeah, I think I am." And surprisingly, I meant it. The letter didn't change anything. Tessa was still going to prison, our marriage was still over, and I was still dealing with the aftermath of her betrayal. But there was something to be said for a genuine apology, even one that came too late to matter. "What do you want to do with it?" I looked at the envelope for a moment, then walked over to the small fireplace in the corner of the gallery. We rarely used it, but I kept it stocked with wood for atmosphere. I lit a match and held it to the corner of the envelope, watching as the paper caught fire and curled into ash. "There," I said, brushing the ashes from my hands. "Fresh start." Sam grinned. "You know what this means, right?" "What?" "You're officially a free man, single, successful, with the best revenge story in Maine history. You're going to have women lining up around the block." I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in months. "Sam, I'm 42 years old. I own an art gallery in a town of 4,000 people, and I just went through the most public divorce in local history. I'm not exactly prime dating material." "Are you kidding? You're the guy who took down a criminal conspiracy and saved the town from corruption. You're practically a folk hero." He wasn't entirely wrong. I'd been getting a lot of attention from single women in town, some of whom had been very direct about their interest. But I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. For now, I'm focusing on the gallery and figuring out who I am when I'm not married to someone who's trying to destroy me. Fair enough. But boss? Yeah? When you are ready, I've got a cousin in Portland who's perfect for you. Divorced, no kids, loves art, and she's got this thing for older men with mysterious pasts. Sam, I'm just saying, keep an open mind. The afternoon passed quietly, with a steady stream of customers and browsers. Around 5 o'clock, as I was getting ready to close, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Moira stood there with a small suitcase and a tired smile. "Thought I'd stop by before I left," she said. "How are you feeling about the move?" terrified and excited in equal measure. She looked around the gallery one last time. This is where it all started, isn't it? Where we planned our revenge. Where we planned justice, I corrected. Revenge would have been petty and personal. What we did was bigger than that. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, we're just as bad as they were. She nodded slowly. You know, I used to think the worst thing that could happen to me was finding out my husband was cheating. Turns out the worst thing was staying silent about it. And the best thing? Meeting someone who reminded me that I didn't have to stay silent. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Thank you, Elliot, for everything. Thank you, too. I couldn't have done it alone. She kissed my cheek, a brief, friendly gesture that felt like closure. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. And Moira? If California doesn't work out, you've always got friends in Maine. After she left, I stood in the empty gallery, watching the sun set over the harbor through the front windows. The blue hour, that magical time between day and night when everything was possible and nothing was certain. A year ago, I'd been a different person, naive, trusting, willing to overlook warning signs because it was easier than confronting uncomfortable truths. That person was gone, burned away in the crucible of betrayal and revenge. The man who remained was harder, smarter, more careful about who he trusted. But he was also more honest, more authentic, more willing to fight for what was right. I thought about Tessa's letter, about forgiveness and fresh starts, and the possibility of happiness with someone new. Maybe Sam was right. Maybe there would be other relationships, other chances at love. But for now, I was content to be alone with my art and my memories and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. I locked up the gallery and walked home through the empty streets of Millfield, past the spot where the Salt and Anchor used to be, past the police station where it had all come to an end, past the harbor where the Blue Hour Festival would someday return. The town was healing, and so was I, and that was enough.